Here's runner number 1. We have a quick background, 5K, 10K collegiate runner, recently graduated, fairly recently has moved to Boulder at a higher altitude. We're at about 5,600 feet here. I'm not sure what that is in meters, maybe 1,800 meters or so, 1,500 meters. And so she's still acclimating to the new environment. No injury history, and the data from all of these runners is going to be from a 60-minute tempo run. Yeah, ouch. So starting with our general overview. First, I just want to point out what I've done here is divided this 60-minute tempo run into 6 laps of 10 minutes. At the bottom here, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Regardless of what workout you're doing this for, we always want to first create segments for comparison if we're going to look at trends of fatigue over time. So if it's an interval workout, that makes it really easy. Let's say it's 8 times 3 minutes or something like that. We're just going to be able to divide up all the intervals and look across the intervals and see how things change. If it's a tempo run, I like to split it up in even segments. If it's a long run, the same thing, but maybe a little bit longer segments. So what we have here is six 10-minute segments, all done at a relatively constant pace, and it's a tempo effort. So for our first runner, here's the 2 things that I picked that stick out sort of right away. If we're looking at heel pitch across these laps, we can see that this right side is a little bit high, and 34, upper 34s to 35 at this pace is a little bit of a high value. Remember, we want this to be lower is better, and I would say on the left side, 31 to 32 is a little bit more what I would expect to see. So just 1 point there. We've got a little bit high heel pitch on the right. The strike angular range, we see some pretty low values on the right. So 1.0, 1.1 gets a little bit better towards the end, but still relatively low values. The left side is better, but certainly could still have some space for improvement. So to me, I'm just looking at this, and as a takeaway, I'm seeing, okay, this right leg seems like we might have a little bit of an issue with power production there and with elastic energy transfer. So we're just going to keep that in mind, keep that in our pocket as we go forward. So here's just displaying that data again. This is our strike AR. We can see the average from the whole tempo run here, and same thing with the heel pitch here. So let's look at these asymmetries next. What we want to see is, where do these asymmetries get larger in magnitude? Or really, any big notable changes we want to just make a note of. So the first thing is in this ground contact time. We can see starting out, not too bad, pretty similar here, a difference of about 6 milliseconds. So really a really small difference. But as things progress, as some of the fatigue sets in, we see that that magnitude growing quite a bit to 13 milliseconds, which is over double change. Next one is the thigh swing speed down here. We can see this starts off pretty even, about 7 degrees per second difference. And as the activity progresses, we see that growing in magnitude quite a bit. Actually, the thigh swing speed down here increases from 7 degrees per second up to 33 degrees per second, which is quite an increase. That's about a 5 times change or so almost. So, this is a key area. What we're gonna want to do with this information is try to figure out about how long into the activity these changes are starting to increase in their magnitude. So a lot of times a runner will be able to sustain their optimal or baseline form for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and then past that point we start to see some of the struggle set in. We start to see some of these movement patterns change. And that's going to be the real goal here today, is identifying at what point do we start to see some of these collections of changes happening, and then how can we shape our training around that. And so with the ground contact time, it maintains pretty evenly for the first 30 minutes before we start to see, especially that right side start to increase a whole lot. Left side is even increasing in that back half as well. And the thigh swing speed we could say, after about the 20-minute mark, that asymmetry starts to grow a little bit more. Sometimes when we're doing this, it's a little bit of a judgment call. It's not always a super clear threshold, and you got to sort of take all of the information that you have and just make a bit of an educated decision on it. So let's look at just sort of a global decline of form. Next thing we want to do is identify any specific duration where a decline of form from baseline begins. And so looking at, I just pulled out these 4 metrics because they seemed pretty telling. We've got ground contact time, we've got recoil angular range, that's how high the foot is lifting after leaving the ground. We've got heel pitch, and we've got strike angular range. And the ground contact time, recoil AR, and heel pitch, all after about 30 minutes, we can see ground contact time starts to trend upwards a lot. That means we're spending more time on the ground. Recoil angular range starts to experience a pretty steady decline, which means that we're not releasing energy at toe off quite as well. That foot's not coming quite as high. It's going to affect our swing mechanics. And then the heel pitch, a little bit difficult to see here, but that starts to trend a little bit higher after the 30-minute mark, which means that we are ultimately spending more time transferring that vertical force into propulsive force, and we're getting a little bit less for it, meaning we're not going as far on each stride. Strike angular range down here at the bottom, I'm going to give this one maybe 40 minutes in before we start to see this steady decline of the values. So in general, mostly around that 30-minute mark seems to be a pretty important threshold for this runner. And I think we could probably make some conclusions based on how all those things are trending. So the common duration of the beginning of decline of form seems to be about 30 minutes. And so, realistically, this runner being with a background in 5K, 10K racing primarily, just may not be ready for tempo work that's at this speed beyond the 30-minute duration. Because what we're seeing is those movement patterns are changing, the ability to tolerate those forces and use them to our benefit is changing a little bit. And all those points before about injury risk, loss of efficiency, maintaining form, and training good movement patterns are not really being accomplished past those 30 minutes. What we're doing is we are allowing our form to decline in order to just complete the workout and accomplish that sort of aerobic work. So, as a coach, the training quality, I see this, I think, we can definitely increase our total quality of training by switching around this workout a little bit, by not exceeding this 30-minute condition. And we can also probably decrease our injury risk by working within those parameters as well. So how can we do this? Well, I want to do as much aerobic work as possible. I don't want to just say, okay, we're only going to do 30-minute tempo runs now, if we can avoid that, because we still need, for various reasons, we still need to be able to accomplish the work that we need to accomplish in order to be fast, but we just want to increase the quality of that. So 2 ways to really be able to start to extend this work duration from 30 minutes and ultimately being able to, our success metric is going to be to be able to totally get rid of that decline of form regardless of the duration. Ultimately, we want to get to 60 minutes without seeing any of that decline. Some ways to train that would be using a broken tempo. Something that I do often with athletes is to just break this into tempo sets that can total more than that 30 minutes, but allow short recoveries. So we might be able to do 4 times 10 minutes with like a 2-minute recovery, 3 times 15 minutes with a 3 minutes recovery. What we'll do then is work up to, once we see good trends with the biomechanical data in those workouts, if, say we're hitting 45 minutes of total time now, and we're not seeing any breakdown, we'll try to build up to 60 minutes of broken tempo. So maybe up to 6 times 10 minutes or 4 times 15 minutes, 3 times 20 minutes, etc. And once we're seeing that, motion maintained, then we might revisit and go for, a single effort type of structure again. The other way that we can sort of work on this is to just, during the session, have some specific monitoring of form and feedback. And, if you've seen some of our previous webinars, we've talked a lot about our target range feature, which is going to be a future release, hopefully pretty soon, at least starting with the cycling application. But basically what this does is it allows you to set a motion target and create a range for where you want to be with your MPI data, and then it'll tell you, it'll provide you live feedback of when you're falling out of that range. And so this is just a great reminder to be able to, you know, choose 1 or 2 MPIs you want to focus on, and then while you're doing the activity, be able to monitor it and just see, okay, am I in the range that I need to be in? Am I starting to fall off in certain areas? Can I tighten things up a little bit and keep a little bit more focus on certain areas of my movement? And that's just another way that we can sort of actively train to start to extend that duration for the breakdown. Of course, I'm a big advocate for strength and conditioning training. So I always like all the athletes I work with, you know, including myself, to be supplementing their primary training through strength and conditioning methods. So of course, you know, these runners, I'll have them all, and you know, I see this run data from their workouts, and without even having to do a functional movement assessment or any sort of comprehensive physical assessments in the gym, you know, let's say that they're remote, or I'm traveling, or they're traveling. If I can see this data even from afar, I can already start to draw some pretty good individual conclusions for them and start to plan better strength training programming so that they can make sure they're not wasting their time in the gym and they're focusing on these areas where they really need to improve. So for this runner, it would just be, you know, here's not a specific program, but these would be the main aspects of it that we would be focusing on. It would be improving lower body force production, improving that left-right symmetry, especially on the right side, and just improving the utilization of elastic energy.